Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Jill Marriage, and I am a graduate student in Museum and Curatorial Studies at Cal State Long Beach and the lead organizer of Forms of Reparations, the Museum and Restorative Justice. This is a virtual symposium that aims to identify the ways in which cultural institutions sustain white supremacy, imperialism, and exploitation. First, Nicola Lee, a CSULB MFA graduate student, will give an acknowledgement.
Hello. California State University Long Beach is located on the sacred site of Pavanga. We acknowledge that we are on the land of the Tongva, Gabrielino, and the Ahachiman, Waino nations, who have lived and continue to live here. We recognize the Tongva, Ahachiman nations and their spiritual connection as the first stewards and the traditional caretakers of this land. We thank them for their strength, perseverance, and resistance. I pass it back to you, Julian.
Thank you, Nicola. This event as a whole was conceptualized by the School of Art Students of Color and Allies in 2018 and then passed to us, making it a collective effort within the School of Art. We would like to acknowledge our advisors, both Nizan and Julian Myers-Szupinska, as well as our funding sources. We have the CSULB School of Art, Instructionally Related Activities Grant Allocation, the Associated Students Incorporated, and the Beall Center for Art and Technology at the University of California, Irvine. In the virtual format, we ask that attendees pose questions through the Q&A functions on both the Zoom webinar and YouTube live stream platforms so that we can ask them on your behalf during the Q&A portion of the session. All presentations will be recorded and made available for later viewing. It is my pleasure this evening to introduce our speaker, Hakeevi Edgar Heap of Birds. The artworks of Hakeevi Edgar Heap of Birds include multidisciplinary forms of public art messages, large-scale drawings, no-series acrylic paintings, prints, works in glass, and monumental porcelain enamel on steel outdoor sculptures. He was recently named a USA Ford Fellow in 2012 and a distinguished alumni from the University of Kansas in 2014. The artist has studied at the University of Kansas in Lawrence, receiving a BFA in 1976, at the Royal College of Art in London in 1977 for graduate studies, and the Tyler School of Art in Philadelphia, getting an MFA in 1979. Honorary Doctor of Fine Arts and Letters degrees have been awarded by Massachusetts College of Art and Design, Boston in 2008, the Emily Carr University of Art and Design, Vancouver, Canada in 2017, and the California Institute of Arts in Valencia in 2018. Heap of Birds has exhibited his work at the Museum of Modern Art, the Whitney Museum of American Art, Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York, Cheyenne and Arapaho Nations Reservations in Oklahoma, the National Gallery of Canada in Ottawa, Museum of Contemporary Art in Sydney, Australia, Documenta in Kassel, Germany, the Orchard Gallery in Derry, North Ireland, University Art Museum, Berkeley, California, and Association for Visual Arts Museum in Cape Town, South Africa, Site Santa Fe in Santa Fe, New Mexico, Hong Kong Art Center in China, Bandung Institute of Technology in Bandung, Indonesia, the Grand Palais in Paris, France, and the Venice Biennale in Italy. The artist's works are in the collections of the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York, Walker Art Center in Minneapolis, Pomona College Museum of Art, Claremont, California, Denver Art Museum in Colorado, Museum of Contemporary Native American Art in Santa Fe, the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., Harold Washington Library, Chicago, Illinois, Belkin Gallery in the University of British Columbia, and Simon Fraser University Gallery in Vancouver, Canada. Recent collections include both the Metropolitan Museum of Art, British Museum in London, MoMA, and the Library of Congress. He has served as visiting lecturer in London, England, Western Samoa, Chiang Mai and Bangkok, Thailand, Johannesburg, South Africa, Barcelona, Spain, Belfast, North Ireland, Norrköping, Sweden, Harare, Zimbabwe, Verona, Italy, Adelaide, Australia, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, Singapore, and Delhi, and Vijayawada in India. He has taught at Yale, Rhode Island School of Design, and the University of Oklahoma. Heap of Birds is retired from teaching at University, or OU, excuse me, after 30 years and is now Professor Emeritus. The professor taught in Native American Studies. His seminars explored issues of contemporary Native American art in visual arts, film, and museums on local and international levels. His public art and studio projects have received grants and awards from the National Endowment for the Arts 2012, the Andy Warhol Foundation 2004, Von Fee Stanton Foundation 2002, the Pew Charitable Trust of 2000, AT&T in 1999, Leela Wallace Foundation 1994, Lewis Comfort Tiffany Foundation 1989, and the Rockefeller Foundation 1987. In June 2005, Heaps of Birds completed the 50-foot signature outdoor sculpture titled Wheel. The circular porcelain enamel on steel work was commissioned by the Denver Art Museum and is inspired by the traditional medicine wheel of the Big Horn Mountains of Wyoming. Heap of Birds' artwork was chosen by the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian as their entry towards the competition for the United States Pavilion at the 52nd Venice Biennale. He represented the Smithsonian with a major collateral public art project in Blown Glassworks in Venice, June 2007, titled Most Serene Republics. This broad project was created as a memorial in Italy to over 20 Sioux warriors and children who died as a part of Bill Cody's Wild Wild West hero shows. His artistic creations and efforts as an advocate for Indigenous communities worldwide are focused first upon social justice and then the personal freedom to live within the tribal circle as an expressive individual. Recently, Heaps of Birds was elected to the American Academy of Arts and Science in 2020. Welcome, Edgar. Thank you for being here.
Okay. That sounds good and everything's fine? Yeah, okay. All right. Hello, everybody. I guess we're going to start with a PowerPoint here. I wanted to say that the title of this talk today is called Spirit Citizen. And from your theme for the series, the webinar, we're discussing, how to negotiate the institutions, which could be museums or galleries, academies, and maintaining your spirit, the spirit of your balance and your, for me, the tribal identity and priority. And then we'll at the very end conclusion of my talk, my PowerPoint, we'll have about a 2.5 minute video with the same title, Spirit Citizen, to look at the reservation, where I come from, where I'm living near, and some paintings and that kind of topic about the spirit of the land. And so the first image here is of the horizon. And so as a very important vantage point for Cheyenne Arapaho people, we're from the prairies. And so we're going to see this sunset every day. We got clear skies or the sunrise. When I lived on the reservation, I could see both. I had a vantage point on top of the hill where I could see like 500 acres of land, but I could witness this. But anyway, I want to just indicate that this flatness is what we have when you can see the whole sky. And even my necklace has a similar design of the flatness, so my paintings have that similar kind of notation as well. Okay, next, please. And tonight I want to, as I always do, I want to dedicate the talk to Indigenous women, and they carry us such a long way and such a struggle. This is my grandmother, Ho'otsio. Ho'otsio is lightning woman, the lightning from the sky as it comes down to the earth. And she's actually holding her daughter, my aunt. So in English, her name was Alice Heap of Birds, or before she was married, it was Alice Redbird. And I have a lot of connection with my grandmother, and I'll show you some prints I did recently about that. Okay, next, please. And again, the life that we have, as a tribal nation, goes back to the elders, and of course the family is central. One of the last slides I'll show tonight is of my family. And so this is my grandfather, my great-grandfather. The little boy on the far left with the headdress is many magpies, Guy Heap of birds, and then his father has the pipe, Black Wolf, and Grace Big Bear is the Cheyenne lady with her daughters, and in the back is the oldest son named John, who later became a minister. But Black Wolf was actually a leader of the Elk Warrior Society. So we have 4 primary Native warrior societies in my tribe, and they actually defeated Custer, the Little Bighorn. So we still have those societies, and in a sense, I took his place. So I'm an elder now in the teepee and in the ceremony, and I'm in the Elk Warrior Society. Okay, next, please. I've been fortunate to have mentors in my career. So I know we're at an art school and a university, so I want to talk a little bit about, how do you relate to your mentors and search out people that can help you in your career and your ideas and so on. This is a sculpture in Wichita, Kansas. It's called Keeper of the Plains, and it's by a great artist named Black Bear Boson. It's about 60 feet tall. It's a Corten steel at the confluences of the Little and Big Arkansas River, okay, in Wichita. Next, please. And here's Black Bear painting. He's painting a mural in a studio in Wichita, Kansas. He had a studio downtown near the river, near where that sculpture was. And he was a very respected figure in Wichita. He started out with commercial art, and then he went into fine art, and he had his own jewelry store, but he wanted to make more murals and more sculptures. And I was lucky enough to have him in my life. I wasn't real close to him, but I watched what he did, and I watched him be respected, and I watched him succeed as an artist and as a businessman, in a very kind of racist place. And he came from Oklahoma. He's Kiowa Comanche, so he was actually an aircraft worker, and he's self-taught, and he survived all that and became a leading figure. Okay, next, please. This is probably his most famous painting. I believe it's at the Philbrook Museum in Tulsa. It's called Prairie Fire, and it's a wonderful painting. He's giving us a kind of a value assessment in that the fire is on the prairie, like we have the fires in California and on the West Coast right now. But the animals and the native people are both fleeing the fire. It doesn't differentiate. Like you're both just kind of spirits on this planet. But it even indicates that the fire is a spirit as well. It's not totally threatening. It's very beautiful. And he's talking about that kind of union of the animals and the fire and the earth. Okay, next. He was painting this mural in a studio, the other shot I showed you. And so this is a treatise on the spirits that come from 2 directions. And he was also a student or a witness of the Southwest. So on the left is more the Navajo, Yebache, the pollen, these spirit figures that are making the desert come out of the desert. And on the right, you have more of the prairie life, the buffalo and the scaffold burials, the buffalo skull, and the water bird, which indicates the peyote religion. And then in the center, you have more of a God presence. And this is a wonderful mural, and it's in a bank along the river in Wichita, Kansas, downtown. Okay, next, please. This is my first painting, I believe, as a student at the University of Kansas. And it's a 6-foot square painting. And again, I indicated the composition in the first slide with the horizon. So I didn't have all that rationale behind me when I made the painting, but in retrospect, I see how I would witness the setting sun or rising sun with that horizon line, and I was always involved with color, but not any kind of, I'd say, identity or politic. Certainly, a young student, 1974, 1973, in Lawrence, Kansas. Okay, next, please. I also worked a lot with printmaking, serigraphy, when I was at KU, and this is about maybe 15 inches across, so it's pretty small. And I was always involved with these rectangular lines and angular lines, and this in this case, sort of moving the planes together. So and I made the print myself, so I got to know advanced printmaking, and of course now I have master printers and have worked at the Museum of Modern Art in printmaking, but this began back in the 70s. Okay, next, please. Another mentor that I had at KU was a painter from the Lenape Nation, Delaware. His name is Don Secondine, and he was a student of a Cheyenne master artist. His name was Richard West Sr., and at Haskell Institute in Lawrence, Kansas. And so Don came from Haskell, which was a native junior college, and he came to KU. I met him there, and I would later go to Haskell to take one course with Dr. West in painting and get to know a bit from Dr. West. So it was very important for me. But Don was really involved deeply into his culture, his tribal culture. He was married to a Kiowa woman from Anadarko, Oklahoma, and her mother had died. And so we were taking a landscape painting class, but again, we sort of subverted the Institute of Landscape Painting, and we made an earthwork instead of making a landscape painting. So we took this tree, which was already fallen. We painted it. We put a horse tail at the top to mimic a woman's hair, and then we put the cedar at the center. Which cedar, as you know, burning it is like a way to release ghosts or spirits. And we just put this up on the prairie in our landscape painting class, and just left it, and it was a homage to his Kiowa mother-in-law, who were called Chano was their name. And so there again, you work in a certain kind of idiom, you make it your own, even though you're within institutional classwork. Okay, next, please. And there's the wind blowing the hair in the sky. Okay, next. So that helped me a great deal, working with Don as a colleague, student. And I would later, as you know, maybe a lot of you know, I do I did a project for the Tongva tribe there near where you are in LA and Long Beach. And I've done many projects to memorialize the memory of Native people. And so that was a beginning with Secondine, but then it wouldn't really sink into me. I would revisit it maybe 30 years later or 20 years later. But I did keep working in a kind of sculptural format. So the paintings became found object, kind of trash collection, dumpster diving, and making beautiful forms from what I found discarded. And so this is a piece about 8 feet across, maybe 6 feet tall. And it's got rope, it's got tar paper, it's got even a little doghouse in the center. All these forms go together to create this feeling, this geometrical but human expression. And it was just something I grew into doing. I didn't plan to do it. I just started working with things I found and continued that for a few years. Okay, next. Another continuation of that work, I call them constructions. So I really believe, certainly as an artist and an art student and so forth, you must be able to execute, for me, with anything, with any material. I worked in glass, I work with video, work with sound, work with painting, sculpture, porcelain, the earth. So I believe you really have to have a comfort level with many, many tools. And so again, this was in a library in Lawrence, Kansas, and I put my work up as an exhibition. This is when I was like a senior in college, I believe. I would take this work, and then I would apply to the Royal College of Art in London and be admitted, and I would go to London to study and live in Europe and travel throughout Europe. So that this work was kind of an entree for me to enter the international art world. Yes. Next, please. Although I did, travel within, to Rome, to Florence, to Amsterdam, to Antwerp, had a show in Edinburgh, and I lived in Knightsbridge. But I was there also during the Sex Pistols time. So it was a pretty interesting time to be in London. Francis Bacon was painting, he was in the pubs, so it was a great time. Rocky Horror Picture Show was down the street, as a theatrical event. And so that really helped me expand my life as an artist. But I really had a lot of missing or angst or empathy toward returning home to the land. So this is a small hill called the Mountain, Oklahoma, but it's called Mount Scott, and this is a tree that died, which would later become a language for my painting. So I returned back from London to Oklahoma. Okay, next, please. And I was asked to be a visiting artist on the reservation at a kind of a tribal social powwow event. And I set up a table, but I wanted to demonstrate serigraphy, printmaking. And I wanted to make a homage to my grandmother's beadwork, Lightning Woman. And so this is the toe section of a woman's moccasin, a shine woman's moccasin. And the angular forms are mountains. And so I began to understand the symbolism, and I kept it as a way to keep working on my own practice as I would go to Philadelphia to Tyler School of Art to enter the MFA program. Okay, next, please. When I went to Tyler, I was pretty confused, and I think that's indicative of a lot of movement. When you move, you have to change. You can't do the same thing. In London, I changed, came back home, I changed. So I took the same kind of format of the printmaking I had before, those little shapes across the center. And they were almost like a Frank Stella-esque form. And so again, at this point, I'm searching for a politic and a idiom that would express my confusion or my worry or my rage of being a young Cheyenne man in America. And I was in a graduate program that had no people of color teaching the graduate students. And I was living, in North Philadelphia, a difficult place to be in. And so what I decided to do was to take my grandmother's beadwork, those images of her beadwork, and then take the shape I had, which is like Frank Stella, kind of modern art, iconic abstraction, without a lot of identity in it. And I had them fight each other. I had them have a battle. Okay, next, please. And then, of course, as you see, there's more beadwork and there's less Frank Stella. So the modern art is losing the battle in a sense. And I'm trying to find my own way to discuss, I guess, the political circumstance of the 70s. I was in Philadelphia in 78, 79, 80. Okay, next, please. One of the visiting artists, as I'm here tonight in Long Beach, at Tyler, we had a great visiting artist program in the 70s. And so we had a lot of New York artists come. Chuck Close came, many other artists. But the main artist that affected me was Vito Conci. So Vito Conci if you don't know him, you should look him up. You know, he's really a pioneer in like body performative art, and also political art and identity art. And he gave a performance lecture at Tyler. This is Vito here. He's since passed. And he really gave us the permission to be ourselves in a sense, and to find our way as artists. And if you're a person of color, or you had to find your way and make it happen within, again, the white academy. Later to go on to museums and galleries, which are similar kind of Anglo academies. And I would later, leave Philadelphia. I would finish my MFA. I would work in my own studio for a couple of years, and then abandon that life on the East Coast and move back to the reservation. And I'm still here. So that was like 1982, 81, I left. But I didn't stay away. I came back. I worked with Group Material, very important collaborative group that were very political. And we had a show called Preparing for War. And my words are on the back wall here of this space in Brooklyn, a military terminal. And we put the work up, and I was actually admiring my work, inspecting it, walking backwards, and bumped into somebody, and it was Vito Acconci. One of those amazing moments. And of course I gushed all this wonderful like praise, whatever. But it was so cool to see his work and to be with Vito in the show. And when I was very young, in 82. Okay, next please. While at Tyler, this is work from Tyler, like maybe 77, 78, I just started making everything into my art. I mean, that's what you have to do, I think, as a young person. You got to throw everything in the art. And maybe keep doing it, maybe never stop. So there's a portrait that a student made of me on the left, Southern Cheyenne. Natural's written backwards. I write a lot of words backwards. On the far top right, that's a photograph of the Philadelphia 76ers. So I'm a big basketball fan. I like Dr. J. I went to basketball games at the Spectrum. I'm a season ticket holder for the Oklahoma City Thunder. My family and I go to all the games whenever they do come back from the NBA. So anyway, that was just part of what you had to stir together, in a sense. This is a drawing about 7 feet by 6 feet. Okay, next, please. When I was in grad school, I was graduating, getting my MFA. There were no Cheyennes that could come to my show. I was in Philly, far away from Oklahoma, and my parents lived in Kansas. And so I decided, how do I represent them here? And the show was about being a Cheyenne person. So I went and bought these red letters. They're cardboard letters, die-cut letters. And I wrote about 6 or 8 of my names, my family names, in the gallery, along with my work. So Howling Crane was actually the moccasin pattern that my grandmother mimicked, or she copied from it. Many magpies are Moya Hanhaskus. That is the original words for heap of birds. And so I was able to use text to represent the family there. Okay, next, please. I made this this large drawing, painting, 8-foot square called Fort Marion Lizards. And this was after I finished grad school. I was still on the East Coast. And so I started researching more and more, and really getting very involved with the history of the Cheyenne people and the disaster with the cavalry, the racism, the violence, the massacres. And so this is a list from Captain Pratt, who had our men from the warrior societies imprisoned after the Ouachita massacre. And they took them to Florida, and then they killed one man on the way. But this is the list he made himself. And so at the top it says Heap O' Birds. And that was my grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, Black Wolf's father. He did not return from Florida. So that kind of disaster, the leadership being taken away and imprisoned, very, very terrible. Little Chief in the center, that's my name, Hakiavi. Jill said it a little earlier. That's my next to list. So the first man named Hakiavi was also in prison as well. So the text again becomes this pivotal moment where the power in this country is in the words. You know, you have to challenge this country with words, and we're making some voting posters now for voting and all these things right today, you know, this week. So anyway, this was like in 1980, I believe I made this piece. Okay, next please. Here are the warriors in prison in Florida. They were taken away from their families and they were held hostage there. Okay, next please. There were no trials, there were no real charges. They were just abused, captured, and detained, and some of them died and were abused by the army. And I draw that comparison to Guantanamo, Camp X-Ray, like right tonight. What's happening tonight at Camp X-Ray? What's happening to the people that are called enemy combatants? Are they dying tonight? You know, will they ever see their families again? You know, so that's what we suffered many years ago. Okay, next please. One of the warriors in prison made artwork there, and one of the main warriors, his name was Bear's Heart, and this is his set of drawings of the cavalry coming, horses, guns, and soldiers, kind of moving again in that format, coming across the prairie, like a sickness or a storm, to have violence against the native people. Okay, next please. The land, Oklahoma, the red earth. I would come back and live on this land, and I'm not too far from it right now, but it's still very present for me, and that was a way of learning, really, to go back to the land. Okay. But again, I wouldn't stay on the land. I wouldn't just stay on the reservation. I would start learning in the ceremony and so forth. But I would go and challenge again the infrastructure of the monster, the media. 1982, I was working with Keith Haring and Jane Dixon, many artists that are very, very popular or very, very known to this day, Jenny Holzer, Barbara Kruger, David Hammonds. And we all made a message on the Times Square billboard. And this was the only billboard at Times Square in 1982. And so I made a message. It's a 50-second message. And Tatistas is the real word for Cheyenne. And it just goes through some cycling where it says eventually, Tatistas, Cheyenne said Vihaw, spider, and Vihaw is white man. So I went to Times Square from the reservation to pronounce, declare that the white man's a spider, because he puts up the fences, he catches everybody, he wraps them up, he kills them. So we made that message at Times Square in 82. Okay, next please. I went back in 88 and was able to create another piece for the Public Art Fund in New York City, which was very difficult, but again, to use the institution, the Public Art Fund, but to have it speak about Native reality. And it's the first time I made the Native Host series, as I came from Oklahoma to New York as a visitor. You know, again, there's no identity where all Indians are the same, or, you know, I'm a visitor like anyone's a visitor to New York. If you're Mohawk or you're Tuscarora, Onondaga, I have to ask to come, you know. So I flipped the word New York backwards, and then I wanted to demonstrate that we need to turn New York around to see their real past. And they would think about themselves as the Dutch making New York, but they didn't make the New York. They didn't make that place. It was already there, you know. So I had 12 of these panels created, and then I think about 6 were censored by the Mayor Koch's office, and I could put up about 6 or 5. Okay, next please. I recently remade the signs, and I had an exhibition in Lower Manhattan, and I put them back up on a kind of a private property. And I'm going to do another project with the Elizabeth Foundation for the Arts, and I'll show a sampling of many of my Native Host projects. Okay, next please. Salt Lake City, University of Utah, and I usually work toward also with a community, working with a community to address the name changes to where the real name for the tribe is used. So Ute isn't really a word that describes anything. The real word is Nuchi. So the students taught me that, and so we put that up as Nuchi, the real word for the Ute people. Okay, next please. This is a recent project, probably like just 2 years ago, at Crystal Bridges, the museum in Arkansas, northern Arkansas. And I think I put up 6 panels there. They're permanent on the museum grounds. And this particular phrase is from the Cheyenne language, which is a declaration of all the visiting tribes together are the host of this land. Okay, next please. And I did a piece on the OU campus, the Sooners backwards. Today your host is Cheyenne. And I picked all these Oklahoma tribes, you know, too. Okay, next please. And I've worked also in the Virgin Islands. And I really liked this piece. And it's something very funny. And it's for all the cruise ship people that come to have a party on the island, you know, and they want to drink rum and listen to reggae, but they don't think about all the nations that are gone to allow them to come. So Taino, and I have artist friends there in St. Croix, and I left about 6 of these panels, and they put them up on Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples Day. When the tour boats come in, they put them up. You know, more of a guerrilla action. Okay, next please. I was invited to go back to the Virgin Islands, and I spoke at the state legislature. And it was African Independence Day. So I met all these amazing professors and leaders and tribal people from the Virgin Islands from a indigenous standpoint. And we were very, very close together. It was great. Okay, next please. I did a big project in Alaska in Anchorage. So Alaska, again, is backwards, showing them to look back at their past. Athabascan. Next, please. I took a trip up the Sound south of Anchorage and encountered this amazing glacier. And so a big part of my engagement is certainly the water, the land, the mountains, the animals, the indigenous population. So this was a really exquisite time to go find this ancient ice. And they brought it on board the ship, and you could bless yourself with this ancient ice, you know. So very, very wonderful day to see this. And it was receding, so it's probably further away now with the global warming. So it's great to have been there to touch that ice. Okay, next please. Trail of Tears. This was at PS1, MoMA PS1, and so I do have those great experiences with the land and with the sea, but of course you come back to the reality of the displacement and the violence against Native people. And so I made this piece in Atlanta and showing the folks there who the tribes were in Georgia, and they had to walk to Oklahoma. So many of the tribes in Oklahoma are from Georgia, but people in Georgia don't think about tribes much anymore. Okay, next please. These are birds from Cheyenne bird eagle on the right, and then the great Zimbabwean eagle in Zimbabwe. And so I worked in Africa as well. I mean, I was curious to go find the reaction toward life, the renewable life in Africa, Zimbabwe, South Africa. And so I worked with artists there. I also work with artists, Black Indians in Rhode Island, at the Risley Museum. So again, museums came into play with this project. Okay, next please. I worked with Tall Oak, who is an African-American hybrid Native person in the center, and then Thimigosi Goniwe, who is a resident of the townships of Cape Town, and also an artist. And we have also a fourth person, Cynthia Ross Meeks, who is Wampanoag. Tall Oak is Narragansett. So we really wanted to really kind of unpack the racial division that happens within Native culture. But there is a lot of racism with Native people about poverty and who is in competition for the last rung on the ladder, in a sense. So there's a lot of friction with people of color together with Native people. But I wanted to really talk about bringing everyone together as artists and spirit citizens. So we made an art piece together called Eagles Speak, in that if the eagles from Zimbabwe could talk to the eagle from Cheyenne, they'd probably get along. Okay, next please. And that was at the RISD Museum. Here's the tree that's very pivotal to my practice and my painting. This is a juniper tree. Often it's called a cedar tree. So going back, I was living in Rhode Island, traveling back and forth for that project for about 2 months. I come back home, I'm back on the land, and I'm making paintings and so forth. Okay, next please. I made these paintings on this barn. And then the Noof series, the paintings that kind of distill some of the land forms and the tree forms, and later the fish forms I would encounter in the Caribbean or in Great Barrier Reef in Indonesia and elsewhere. But I would make these paintings in Bar Harbor, Maine. So the Fabric Workshop, Kippy Stroud was very generous to give me a studio on an island in the ocean. And I was living by the water, but I could paint in the forest. And so I painted this barn for a few years in the summertime. You know, it was really great. Next, please. So these are more of the Noof series, and Noof is to do something 4 times. It's an action, in a sense, a behavior 4 times. So I make 4 Noof paintings each time. And this is a 36 by 44, a little smaller. Okay, next, please. And I was also traveling and working in Bali, and I did some work in Bandung, Java. And then later I would go to Lombok and go to Sumatra. But this is the volcano in Bali. I'm in the water, and I snorkeled there too. So again, the water and the fish became to have an interplay. Okay, next please. When I was in Sumatra, I met with the elders who were weavers, and they made exquisite pieces of work. So again, I'm always trying to correspond and communicate with other indigenous artists. And I collected her weaving. She was a great, brilliant weaver and by Lake Toba, the Batak tribe in Sumatra. Okay, next please. And of course, encountering the reef. And so that's why I would go as well, to be with the fish, to be in the water, to be buoyant, whether it's in the Caribbean or whether it's in the Great Barrier Reef, Australia. Those forms really inform my painting, and they continue to do that. Okay, next please. And so you might see some of that movement, you know, and it's the kind of thing where the painting generates itself. One shape starts out, one shape goes over it. It's almost like a storm or a school of fish or leaves blowing by, or however you want to encounter it. But it's made, you know, with that kind of more of a organic progression. Okay, next please. Without the COVID, you'd find me closer to the ocean. I'm in Oklahoma, and I'm not really moving out of Oklahoma very much. But this is Hawaii, Oahu, and I'm painting on the back porch, the lanai, and I'm about maybe half a mile to the beach, to the ocean, and I'm making these paintings. And I've painted in Mexico, near Cancun or Cozumel, the Dominican Republic, and so forth. Okay, next please. And that's a larger Noof painting, probably from like 1979. And the St. Louis Museum of Art acquired this painting, and I've done work since then. I was there for another project, and I was happy to see my work put up with Bryce Martin and Joan Mitchell. Okay, next please. You see the other work. So, and I was very nervous about having my painting hanging next to Bryce Martin, because I didn't see my work maybe somewhat in the same stature, perhaps. But I was very proud. The painting held its own with the Martin, and then next to that was the Mitchell. Okay, next please. So there's the two. So we're in the same gallery, and not in the native space, not a native gallery, but the contemporary art gallery, the abstract painting gallery. And so there again, to challenge the whole dynamic and rubric of contemporary art museums, and to put your work next to the masters of abstract painting, not in the ethnographic section. Okay, next please. This is a diagram going back more into a Native American presence or concept or values. This is a medicine wheel in Wyoming and the Bighorn Mountains, and it's a diagram of those. And so you have actually the indications of it being a scientific instrument, showing the solstice, regal, cirrus, summer solstice, sunset, and so forth. So I was asked to create a new piece for the Denver Art Museum. I think around 2000. It took about 5 or 6 years, or maybe longer, maybe 8 years. Next slide, please. Maybe 10 years. So here is the same diagram on the right, and that diagram is actually the precursor to the Earth Renewal Lodge on the left. So all the tribes in the prairies share the same identity in terms of religion, with a structure of renewing the earth during summer solstice. And so that lodge on the left is what we build here in Oklahoma, the Cheyenne Warrior Society, women's societies, and we conduct the earth renewal inside of that space. I'm a instructor in that ceremony. I've danced 16 years, and I have a young man I'm taking through the ceremony right now for 4 years. So that is really the kind of the pivotal form for the tribe to renew itself. If you look at the poles on the lodge, there are fork poles where two branches come together, kind of like a fork like this. And then those forms are what I chose to utilize in my sculpture. And then the rafters that go up to the top, the straight lines, are indicators of the stones in the circle. Okay, next please. So there's Wheel, Denver Art Museum. They've built a new addition on the museum, or a couple of new additions. We've moved this piece. It'll be in the front of the museum on the new entrance, and it'll probably be inaugurated maybe in another year from now. So I've been consulting with the museum, but it's a similar arrangement of those standing trees with autobiographical information about the Cheyenne people and the ancient people in Colorado. And this circle of land is our ancestral homeland. So we lost the reservation treaty and moved to Oklahoma. And there's been many gatherings here, ceremonies, particularly around Sand Creek Massacre time. And so I've asked the Denver Art Museum to save 1 foot of the earth in that circle, and they have done so. And so that's hollowed ground where people cried and prayed, and they're going to bring that back and put it back on the new site, and we're going to put these trees back up. Okay, next please. A big part of this work is more educational. So it's my daughter, Desba, Lightning Woman, Heap of Birds, named after my grandmother, and I'm showing her the piece. We're in Denver. Okay, next please. I was in Beijing, and again, these values are just, they're international. You don't have to even hardly discuss the meaning. Everyone can pick it up from an indigenous standpoint. But so I gave a talk at Beijing Normal University in China, and they made me this wonderful poster. One of the Chinese design students made this beautiful poster, which I really like a lot. But I had to talk to them about another myth, and that is democracy. So the next slide, please. And so there was this discussion, of course, it was a very hot discussion or hot button, but about when they brought the Statue of Liberty out in Tiananmen Square, and brought it out and wanted to believe in democracy. And of course, we have democracy now. Look at all the problems we have in America. So I just made a piece in '89 and said, don't believe Miss Liberty. She doesn't tell the truth. Okay, next. So I showed that in China. Here I am on the reservation back home. So all these things are very fluid. I don't see it as as I said, you go away, you stay away, or you come home, you stay home, or you work with just the tribal people. And no, I think you can work with everybody and share and learn. This is one of my favorite days. This is a medicine wheel workshop I did on the reservation with about 250 tribal elders who came to paint with me in Watonga, Oklahoma. Okay, next, please. I think it was 2 summers ago, I was asked to be a visiting artist in South Dakota, University of South Dakota in Vermillion. And they had gathered a program with about 20 or so young, primarily high school Native students that were interested in the arts. And so we did an intervention where I worked with them to create public art pieces, and we put them up outside in a circular area out in front of the art school. Okay, next, please. So most of these works are all student works, and they created their own text. And we did this within about 4 days. So it was very fast and very meaningful. Okay, next, please. Yeah, I really like all these works. Okay, next. Very proud of their offerings. Okay, next, please. She was a student that went on to Yale University and studied there. Okay, next, please. It's a Navajo student, one of the Navajo leaders, Minuleto. Okay, next, please. I work with Art in America, magazine Art in America, and I wanted to really make a message to Native artists. And I got the cover, and so I asked them, do not dance for pay. I asked them to really be more enlightened, not to entertain, but to actually, fight for your family, your tribe, your identity, and make art that isn't just entertaining. And also, if you see at the top of the title, I flipped America backwards also. Okay, next, please. So even using the magazine, no one would think, well, you could flip America backwards on Art in America, but yeah, you can. I mean, all these things you can do. And that was a monoprint. So I'm gonna show you some monoprints with Michael McCabe. I print in Santa Fe primarily, but also print in Hawaii and Los Angeles. Okay, next, please. The monoprints on glass with a plate oil, writing backwards. Okay, next. John Greco, a printmaker in Santa Monica. I printed with John a lot as well. Okay, next, please. Charlie Cohan, I work with him at the University of Hawaii, Manoa, Honolulu. Okay, next, please. This is a democracy print, Genocide and Democracy. I showed it in Vancouver. My daughter Desba's with me, and we have a drummer inaugurating the work from the Salish people. Okay, next. So Point of Sword Hill and history. Next, please. Missing, murdered Native women, Pilgrim's Pride. Next, please. So those were words somewhat from some songs and from mythical American life, I guess. Active Shooter was my exhibit at MoMA PS1 in New York. Okay, next, please. And I did a whole series of prints in Santa Fe called Surviving Active Shooter Custer. Next, please. These are all 22 by 30 inches. So quite a big installation. Next, please. And I used some songs myself for these words too, but this is the Clash, the rock group Clash too. Okay, next. And I'm ghosting the prints now. So the first image you had with the group was the bright red, and we're pulling one more pull from the plate and making sort of a fainter color rendition. But that to me is actually indicating how natives aren't seen clearly in America. They're more faint, subdued, oppressed, suppressed. So I hang them together, the ghost and the primary prints. Okay, next please. This is one about health. It's called Health of the People's the Highest Law. And on the left are the primary prints. They're all about health issues, kind of disastrous things that go on in Native lives. And on the right are the ghost prints from the second pull. Okay, next please. At the Plaz, he was bonus veins. Many Native lives are engaging the plasma, where they sell their plasma, the blood, they sell it. And if you can sell it often, the street guys call you bonus veins because you get a lot of bonus from your plasma, get paid more. Okay, next please. This one's kind of more celebratory, and it's about the life of, on kind of an after party powwow. And there's these songs called 49 songs. And they're sung after a powwow, and it's sort of a party situation. And I was really researching those songs. Of course, I've been to the parties, and so it's more of a kind of a fun epitaph here. Okay, next, please. And there I am making the prints, and these are made in Santa Monica. So some of them were for the 49 songs. Okay, next, please. A very important work as well that was not ghosted. It was just one set of prints, half sheets, 15 by 22. This is called Fort Supply, and it was collected by the Worcester Art Museum outside of Boston just recently. The first piece, Active Shooter Custer, was collected by the Museum of Modern Art. So these works have kind of entered into collections, major collections. The Met has some work. The Whitney has 15 drawings. So these works, you know, are fairly provocative. This is a kind of a whole just unpacking of Custer's brutality and the 7th Cavalry. And it was the first piece that the museum was interested in. Okay, next, please. One of my favorite, more personal sets of works is called An Indian Home. And so Grandma Cooked the Catfish. These are all from kind of my childhood and the life from the reservation. And also the life in Wichita, Kansas as well. This is the primary set of prints. Okay, next, please. The next is, oh, that's one of the details. Old Man Sat Calm Near the Heat. This is in a teepee, ceremony time, big fire, 100 degrees outside, but it feels cold, but it's so hot in the teepee. But the elders are so calm. And in a sense, I've come to sit in that place. Okay, next, please. And that's the ghost. So again, a more faint set of works, which talks about how Native life is more faint. Okay, next, please. Standing Rock Awakens the World, about the Standing Rock battle in Dakota and fighting back against all the powers and a lot in death and some sadness. Okay, next, please. Water is our first medicine. That was actually a kind of a placard that they had during the protest. Okay, next, please. And there it is all together. I hang them like this sometimes as well. So you have the primary on the left, which is more stronger color. Then you have the ghost on the right. So it's 48 prints, 22 by 30 inches. This was just done a couple of years ago. Okay, next, please. Columbus Day. And I did visit the Dominican Republic and did a lot of research on Columbus. And I've been in Spain, where Columbus came from. Valencia was a place he met Isabella. And so I really wanted to bring out some of those points from the first encounter in Dominican Republic. And there's ghost prints on the right and primary prints on the left. This was hung at Art on Paper, the major art fair in New York City. And they gave me this big, huge wall, the biggest wall in the space. So again, you might not think it was possible, but Columbus Day was really the primary voice in that whole convention hall just a couple years ago. Okay, next, please. These are some details from Columbus Day. Okay, next, please. And what they did to the tribal people, the Taino, Carib. If they didn't find gold, they'd cut your tongues and ears, noses off. Okay, next, please. One of my newest works, Water is Your Only Medicine. And I did a whole series on water. These were all done in Santa Fe. So each one is 22 by 30, 48 prints. And on the left is the primary, on the right is the ghost. Okay, next, please. And you'll get to see the details here. And what we've been doing is that we have, these are all white Reeves BFK, all of these prints, the primary. And next, please, the next slide. A detail, amniotic fluid, baby grows in the liquid, obviously, good in a good way. Okay, next, please. And what we're doing now is that we're getting different colors of paper. We got a kind of a brown butcher paper. We got blue paper, gray paper. So we're actually varying the ghost, and it's becoming very colorful. And I really like it a lot. I really like what's happening with the ghost prints. So we have maybe 8 kinds of paper we're working with. And the primaries are on white, but then the ghosts are on different colors of paper. Okay, next, please. And the newest piece, Why is Immigration Dictated by Foreigners? And I really had to address the issues of immigration in America, this horrible crisis we have with immigration. And again, on the left is the primary, the first pull. On the right is the ghost, and I'm in there as kind of scale. So it's a fairly large piece, museum kind of size piece. Okay, next, please. And these are the primary prints. And I'm always collecting these words. I do a lot of research. I'm writing in my phone to first get the first notes, words down, and then I'm gonna write on vellum or Bristol. Then I'm gonna write on newsprint. Then I'm gonna go to New Mexico and make the prints. Okay, next is the detail. This is you can probably figure out who this is about. He puts brown children in wire cages. Okay, next, please. And really beautiful, I think, the ghost of this project here as well. The varying colors of paper, and then the different kinds of inks and so on. And kind of a more subdued, kind of difficult, trying feeling, I think, but also very beautiful. Okay, next, please. A few last slides here. This is my overall declaration that we survive in spite of the empire, and we have to continue. We do that with give me the next slide, please. We do that with the ceremony, the sage, the sweetgrass, the cedar, cottonwood, willow, the prayers. And I'm very, very immersed in that life. That's why I live here in Oklahoma. And we pass it on, we transmit it to the next generation. And it's about your family, it's what it's about. Next slide, please. My daughter, Desba, Lightning Woman Heap of Birds, my wife, Shanna Ketchum Heap of Birds, and myself were photographed taken at UBC, in Vancouver, but I was receiving an honorary PhD, but here we are together, and we still are together. And so I guess we can go to the video. It's a very short video, Nick's video, and I really like what he gave us here. Should I turn my thing off or no? Is the audio up, Joe? There should be some talking here, Jill.
I'm so sorry. Are you not hearing it?
I'm not hearing.
Okay. Let me troubleshoot real fast. I'm so sorry.
All right. The beginning is very quiet, but then there is dialogue.
I'm wondering if it's because you're screen sharing.
Should I turn mine off or something?
No, it's not allowing it now. I am so sorry.
So someone is saying you have to share computer audio. You need to make sure the audio settings in the Zoom are set up correctly for video sharing from computer audio. Can Edgar maybe share directly from his?
I don't have the video.
Oh, I see.
I could look for it, but I don't have it.
Okay. Someone said you can link us the Vimeo so we could watch it on our own.
I'm so sorry. It's telling me now we have to download an additional program to run audio through webinar.
If you do that, we all have to log off. So
I'm going to try one more option. I am so embarrassed and sorry, but it is not allowing me to do this.
Anybody have any other ideas how to do it?
I am happy to share this with everybody. I can grab the link and put that through.
Is David, what about David's computer?
Would you allow me to try, David?
Yeah, where's the link?
I'm wondering, Edgar, how would you feel if, well, Jill is trying to take this on. Maybe we should do some Q&A or maybe wait 5 more minutes.
Q&A.
I'm almost there.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Oops. Okay, can you hear anything?
It's very quiet and there's some birds singing or talking.
Still nothing? Let me just check. Yeah, it works. You can hear it very faintly. You're probably hearing my headphones. Oh, I know what I can do.
didn't have running water and
Can
electricity.
you hear it now?
It was a
Okay.
3-room kind
It's
of.
David. Wait, let me just start it again.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Old house, but living here was a real privilege, and learning.
There we go. That's the trick. Use the mic from your computer.
I always talk about how painting doesn't ever stop. And the painters never quit painting, even when they're not painting. I mean, they're going to go back and make that progression extend further. They should be exploring with the medium, and reorganizing configurations and exploration and investigation. You got to articulate the ideas through a form, exploring new ways to articulate those shapes. The earth doesn't care about humans. The earth has nothing to do with humans. And it's fine on its own. And it's been fine on its own. And you can kind of damage a little bit of things, but only as it pertains to humans. Like if you mess up the ozone, we get more sunburn. Or if you poison the water, we can't swim in it or drink it. It's spun before, it's going to spin after. But people relate more to each other. And they think they're getting something done because they relate to each other. And then someday the earth will move, tilt a bit, and get close to the sun, and there'll be no more people here. And that's why the tribes have so much humility. We pay homage to where we are. That's what we do every day on this planet. Is that we're not bigger than it or more smarter than it. We're happy to be kind of hosted by it. We're on the allotment, the North allotments, North Arapaho family allotments, my mother's and her relatives. I moved here in the 80s, early 80s, and my great-grandmothers, they were very generous and allowed me to live at the top of the hill. And it didn't have running water and electricity. And it was a 3-room kind of old house. But living here was a real privilege, and learning from the land, the weather, the animals. And again, that wasn't easy, but I think it puts me in a good position to always be comfortable on the planet. Like I'm comfortable wherever we are. But I made a lot of the work. Actually, the work that the Whitney collected was made out here. And a lot of the work that I've got being shown in museums and so forth, major museums in the world, was made out here, and it still resonates. Like every shape should be an entity when you're painting. To me, like every shape you make should be like a little animal spirit, or it should have that weight. It's not embellishment. It's like this tree is something, and you know that you look at a tree, you touch it or whatever. It's like you gotta be like that tree's got to have as much status as anything out here. And then you overlay it, overlay it, and then you get this. Like here, you get this strata of all this visual beauty, but it comes from being in this environment for years, on a daily basis. It's become a language, a visual language for me, a visual language that can be repeated and I can explore anywhere. But it comes from the experience of being on the land as a young man, and just continuing that relationship in the work as well as in physicality, but also in the work. It's the homage to the earth is gonna be present. As an artist, They need to live in a place that they can learn in. They need to be somewhere living on this earth that they pick that they can learn, not the hippest place or the funnest place or the most money place, but you want to learn where you're sitting and sleeping every night, where you have to learn. It trickles down into being something very significant if you understood where you're sleeping and where you're living, and be citizens of that place and take care of the spirit of those places. Red bird.
Want to tell people the secret?
I think I'm so happy we figured out how to get that going. If we can jump into some Q&A.
Yeah.
Perfect. We have a question. Do you have advice for those of us who have amazing, insightful, and knowledgeable artistic mentors who feel further and further removed as COVID continually separates us? And for those of us who don't, do you have advice for connecting in a meaningful way to an established artist such as yourself?
That's a big tough. Well, it's really difficult. I mean, I have friends in New York, and we communicate through technology and museums too. I'm working with some museums right now as well. Some of this is going to have to just remedy itself later. I mean, there's just not much. I go to Santa Fe because I can drive there, and my printer is there. Michael McCabe is there, so I've been there twice to make like 100 pieces of work. So if you can drive, you can go, and handle it carefully. Flying isn't working out, so but I think you should always look for that relationship, though. Schools are somewhat useful, but a real person to person relationship is what you will really benefit from. Yeah.
Thank you. You talked about different groups fighting over who's at the bottom of a poverty hierarchy. What do you think the role of power of the artist is in relation to these groups and those conversations?
Well, I feel like you have to make the bridge. When the artist can make the bridge, you can go and relate to the other, entities, the other tribes or communities, and through art, you can actually agree on a discussion or an investigation. And that's what I did in South Africa. And the issue of Black Indians is very, very touchy in America. But when I brought the African artists to Narragansett, it was very, very fluid. Once it wasn't like a racial question or about money, but then when the person came and sat at the kitchen table, then it all changed. When, person to person again. Or when I was in Africa, I was in Zimbabwe, and in some ways it's hard on me. I have to stretch and bend far, to get to do these things. But I really enjoyed it. I miss it. I wish I was back. But yeah, the artist can be the go-between for those things. But you have to. I think what you have to really focus on primarily too is have something to exchange. You if you want to have a community to community relationship, you've got to relate to your own community first. Wherever you live, you have to have something to bring, rather than just go yourself and just be a solo agent. You got to have something with you, which the elders teach you, or the land, or the animals, or the weather, or however you see it. You garden, you're a gardener, whatever you do, to take that with you to exchange is very important.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever disagreed with how a museum or gallery has shown your work? What would you suggest to artists that find themselves in this predicament?
Oh, it happens a lot, especially with galleries. Galleries, ooh, you never know, how it's going to end up. I prefer museums, because we're trying to communicate in a museum. Gallery is like a store, so you're a store trying to market something. And there can be some, good movement there too, communication, but that's not really the first order of business, so, and then the artist doesn't have a lot of strength in that relationship, so like right now I'm working on my own representation. I'm not really working with a gallery. And I never did really. So I think, it's important just to do your own art to art, like artist run spaces are very important. I'm having a show, I think in LA coming up soon. It's sort of a semi-artist run space. And I still will always work with them. I do a lot of things right now about voting, kind of free voting posters and stuff. And so I think, I wouldn't worry so much about the galleries. If you're a young artist, I would just worry about the work and then actually connecting with other artists and being generous. And then it may take a couple decades, to get where you want to go, if you're lucky. So the artist to artist is very important.
Thank you. Your work invites conversation between art and viewer and themselves, and then viewer with others. Do you believe that art and conversations have the power to sway someone's ideology in our current moment?
Oh yeah, and I think what you want to do for me is that you want to be respectful as an artist in that you present a point of view in your practice, but you're open to interpretation. You're open for the viewer to generate their own interpretation of what it is you're making. So it's not a closed-ended maneuver. You're just going to deliver it, and you're going to have a lot of sincerity and do a good job, and then I think it's up to the viewer and even the institution to take it and use it. Make something happen in their own mind or their own fantasy. Just you need to have them activate it. It's not just I'm going to have a masterpiece and put it out there and everyone's going to dig it. It's like you want to let them have some room. So I always think about it being a little bit unfinished a bit, so they can finish it. You don't want to close it down, because then they can dispense with it. If it's so absolute, you want to leave some opening in what you create.
Then I think time-wise, this might be our last one, if you'll grace us with that moment. What type of artwork are you most excited to see as a viewer? And is this different than what you're excited to see as an artist or as an instructor?
Well, I go to the MoMA, and I look forward to seeing my work there. It hasn't been up yet, but it was at PS1, and I have 3 rooms at PS1, and I saw my work at the Met too. I saw my work at the Met, and very nice to go see your own practice next to Julian Schnabel or Robert Rauschenberg, or seeing those paintings with Joan Mitchell, and it's great to see yourself dialoguing with history, without you controlling it. But when I go to town, I kind of go into town. When I go to New York, I go to MoMA and I look at Pollock's, and that's what I want to do all the time. I want to go and see painting, great painting, and so that's what I always try to do is make it over there and sit for 20 or 30 minutes and watch the painting. All the painters that are out there, in those museum venues, I really enjoy it, and I learn from it. I marvel at what they've done, and I feel like I'm continuing that with my prints. I mean, like the fluidity of Pollock and the drips and the splashes, and my prints have this sensibility of this creation that's kind of not in control, and I like achieving that. But I go look at his work. Sam Gilliam, great painter. Sam Gilliam, a lot of great painters out there that you can go see. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing your practice and approach and your artwork with us directly. It means a lot to us.
It was great to have the time to connect. Right.
For all of our attendees, also thank you for being here. We know that spending more time on Zoom isn't the most exciting thing currently, but we appreciate your presence. This is a part of a series of 7 different lectures and panels that conclude on Wednesday with a panel conversation between Tanya Autry, Aruna D'Souza, Helen Molesworth, and Laura Rajkovic, moderated by our own Dr. Nizan Shaked. For questions, to find details about registration, or to rewatch recordings from the series, please go to our website. It's www.wedemandreparations.com. Other than that, thank you again for everyone being here, and we hope you're all well.
All right.
Thanks, Edgar. Have a good night.
You too.